Thanks so much for tuning into Talking Point. I'm your host, Neeraj Shah, and the Talking Point today are the views of Mr. Vikas Khemani Johnson. Right now needs no introduction, and the conversation will center around a bit of the here and now, and a bit of what Carnelian Capital says is an ideal framework to follow, which will, and we'll let Vikas speak about it, which might give you an insight or two about where I, and everybody else should spend maximum of our time in our investing thoughts, so to say. But we'll come to that in the second half of the conversation. Vikas, great having you. Thanks for joining in.
Neeraj, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
The pleasure is ours, Vikas. So, Vikas, frankly, the talking point, not just today, but for the last 5 days and maybe until Jackson Hole is out of the way in the near term, is about whether or not the taper will happen sooner rather than later, and what impact can an event like a taper have on the emerging markets. Are they already pricing it in? Because we've heard about it so many times now, it's not going to be a surprise anymore. What are your thoughts? I'm asking you to wear your previous sell side hat, if you will, Vikas, for a bit.
So, Neeraj, I think, of course, whenever this kind of unprecedented liquidity happens, it is very natural that at some point in time markets will start worrying about tapering off or withdrawals, and thereby impact on the global liquidity cycle and the interest rate cycle. And that's a precise reason I think we've seen some amount of volatility, consolidation, whatever you may call it. My thought process is like this. I think probably we are while U.S. economy has been recovering, I think inflationary pressures are, in my opinion, more supply side driven, supply chain disruption driven, than rather than really only monetary policy led or strong demand led. So till the time I think Fed sees a structural revival in the demand, revival in the economy, my personal view is that unlikely there will be a very big sustainable taper of program being implemented. While Fed will try to sensitize market, and which I think we've been seeing in works for some time. But I mean, I had a chance to interact with Dr. Bernanke also, and his view was also that probably Fed would look at more late sort of 22 than anything else. But in macroeconomics things change very often. We don't know. So right now I think clearly, given this concern, I tend to believe that you will see a volatile market, consolidated market. But I would personally not worry as much as a significant sharp taper or thereby changing in US yield environment. But you can never say no. I mean, we have to watch out. These are the very, very big moments. We all have a very limited understanding of the complex global macro. Policymakers can decide based on their perspective, could be different. Like Ben Bernanke last time said that I have to worry about US. I mean, I don't care about the rest of the world. Same way, I don't know what this time around. It looks like that policy is no more there, but we don't know how Fed will kind of take this time, and we don't have any sort of for sure insight, and nobody would have for that matter. So my personal take right now is that we will see a couple of months of volatile or sort of kind of market, and today's meeting would be, I think Jackson Hole is kind of expected to be one more indication giver. So let us see how it goes out. But right now, as we stand, I am not overly worried about that. One should sell lock, stock, and barrel, and look like long stated sell emerging market kind of story. At least I am not believer in that yet.
Okay. The other conversation, Vikas, is that even if the tapering event or maybe an eventual hike is not as bad a move, because like you said, the Fed will sensitize the market towards it. I think a number of people, and not a number of people, but a few people have made this argument in the last few days about there being a bit of a few markers which indicate toppish behavior, retail participation, the deluge of IPOs, what have you, valuations. And some people argue that if you look at the future 2 years out, they are not expensive. But there is an argument made that if you just look at the normalized bands at which the markets trade, then the valuations are stretched. BofA recently came out with a report saying that they believe that the markets could again gravitate towards that 15,000 mark because the rallies lasted a particular number of days or weeks or months, and from there it typically cools off. Manish Dangli, I was in a conversation with him. and he was making enough arguments about how the inflation argument in India is easier to make, and because of the equity risk premium, there could be a correction. So net, what I'm trying to say is there are a bunch of arguments being made that maybe we are toppish and we need to cool off a little bit. Even it may be healthy, but from 16,500 to 15,000 is still about just a 10% correction, but a large one at that on the number of points. Are you tactically, Vikas, do you reckon that that could happen?
See, Neeraj, I think, and we will talk more about this in a later part of the show, as you said that, but this can happen anytime, whether you are at 15,000 index, 16,000 index, or 12,000 index, right? Those kind of corrections are obviously any day possible for many reasons. Of course, do we take to, we need to recognize that right now there is a bit of exuberance in the market, the way we have seen, retail participation, IPO market. Last month alone, 30 IPOs were filed. That gives you an indication of kind of IPO which is coming into the market, right? So, can this, and we have had, it's not that we have not, Indian markets have kind of done very well over the last 1 year, right? So, when you are sitting in this kind of setup, it is kind of very natural to sort of expect some sort of correction, possible correction, and that could happen anytime. Now, I can only tell you one thing. I have been talking to many market participants, and a lot of investors have been talking about correction from 15,000. Right now, you come to 15 to 16,500. Now you are expecting again 10% correction. Now at 15,000, you did not invest expecting a correction, right? So in my opinion, it is as long as you are structurally sort of bullish on the market and setup of the market, it is futile to kind of spend time on that, according to me. But having said that, of course, does it worry me? Number of penny stocks, low quality businesses are doing well. Retail participation are buying into small companies very easily, without any research. Those worries telltale signs of a mini euphoria. I think one can very well sense, in your social circles, people have started talking about markets. All those telltale signs are which you usually look for, right? Now, so I don't know when the correction will come, but yes, I would say this is a time to pay a lot more attention to the risk. This is a time to pay a lot more attention to, risk reward has definitely tilted, right now, and more in, it was a very, very attractive a year ago. Today, it has definitely, kind of tilted. So one has to be watchful. And, in this point in time, managing risk becomes a lot more important because the returns have been very easy to come by. And that's where I think investors, in my opinion, should spend a lot of time.
So how are you doing that? How are you managing the risk? How are you paying attention to risk?
So I think, again, it's a very, interesting question since you bring, now I will kind of, so there are three types of risk when in any market invest: type A risk, type B risk, and type C risk, as we define. Type A risk is the risk of total loss of your capital, right? Where basically you lose 80 to 100% of your capital, right? Now, type A risk comes only broadly from two resources. When you bet on inferior quality of the management, or, you kind of invest on from a business disruption risk, right? Whenever you do these, and historically you can go and check 10-year, 20-year, 30-year data, and more likely from the first one also, then you bet on inferior quality of the manager and inferior quality of the business. Now, this is very controllable risk. You have to just maintain your discipline. You have to do hard work. You have to do research. You don't have to fall into temptation of, what is working, running fast. So when you do that, the type A risk is a very, very good risk, controllable risk to manage. Type B risk, as you rightly said, that is a mark-to-market risk, volatility risk. Can market correct 10%, 15%? Answer is yes. Any bull run which is sustained, whether we have seen in our lives, many of them, and during the bull run, there will be sharp and short corrections, right? And that comes from geopolitical, political risk, any event happening, even, something like pandemic happened. Who expected, if you see, before getting into the pandemic, Indian economy was very much nicely recovering, and the corporate earnings were picking up, and all of us were saying that good things are back, back. But suddenly, this kind of unexpected event came. So this risk comes from always unexpected, which we can never predict, never plan. We have to just manage in your risk framework. And funnily, this is a risk where most amount of time is spent by people. So something which is uncontrollable, most amount of time is spent on this risk. Whereas, in my opinion, this risk is something completely, of course, you need to keep in mind, you can't ignore it, but you can't really, frankly speaking, manage in a big way, right? You got to live with it. Tomorrow, let's say something happens, it will come and you can't, still, who planned for pandemic, right? Nobody, right? And we lost so much, short-term risk, but it came back, right? And the type C risk, which is basically risk of opportunity loss, that you should have invested into asset A, you invested into B, stock A, invested into stock B. And again, that risk is also very much controllable through your effort, knowledge. This comes from largely, your long held biases. I will, only buy at this B, or I will not buy this sector, or lots of, anchoring biases we all have, right? So constantly you have to keep fighting those biases. This comes from lack of knowledge. We very often don't see that where the ball is going to be rather than where it is. And so this can also be addressed through knowledge, hard work, research. So type A and type C risks are very, very controllable, manageable. And that's a risk where actually most amount of time should be spent. But unfortunately, setup of, and most on people end up spending time on type B risk, and thereby, in my opinion, doing disservice. Of course, if you're a trader, type B risk is the most important risk. There's no question on that. And that's where the opportunity lies. So that's a very different segment I'm talking about. So this is how, at least I believe, so if market corrects 10%, goes down 15,000, I would say if you're sitting on cash, it will be a great opportunity. If you're not sitting on cash, just sit and, sort of play out. I mean, that's fine. Yes, of course, if you're a leveraged player, you should worry about this type B risk also. So that's a very clear framework we have. According to me, in India, we are in a very, very long super cycle. Corporate earnings have just started picking up. When you have this kind of pickup happening, it is never over in 1 year or 2 years. We've just not even seen 1 year of good corporate earning growth. So this is here to sustain. And on the top of it, we have spoken about this in the past. There are many more new drivers which historically never existed for India have come about. When you have this kind of setup, in my opinion, it is futile and waste of time to optimize for 5-10% correction. I mean, that's how at least I see, and I may be completely wrong. And I'm not casting anything on anybody who looks at this.
Yeah. No. So okay, and thanks for that. And by the way, viewers, it's a very interesting framework that what Vikas spoke about. I presume it will be there on their website. You should try and read a bit about that a bit more. I had read it and I found it fascinating. But Vikas, my question is precisely that. I know, so spending inordinate amount of time on the type B risk is futile. But what I meant to ask was that at the current juncture, are you actively preparing, by virtue of all that you've studied, etc., and all of that, are you actively preparing for the possibility of this unfolding? Now, nobody's talking about 100%, but are you preparing for that 10% in that maybe you're buying some protection, maybe you're sitting on some bit of cash which is higher than what you otherwise might be, or have you parked a bit more in defensives than what you otherwise would be? Have you done anything like that in your portfolio?
Not really, because I think it will be, again, in my opinion, we have not done anything of that kind. Of course, when the new money comes in, we kind of try to advise investor to be a little cautious, be a little bit more SIP kind of approach than really put everything right now, because we think that there could be one next 3 to 6 months, there could be one sharp correction. Now, again, one does not know whether that will come at 17,500, 16,500. We don't know. So if you get another 10% correction from 17,500, who knows, right? So bull market tends to always, markets tend to surprise always on the upside and downside, right? So we don't do much about it, to be very frank. We are just sitting, again, which are the businesses which are kind of going to be creating next amount of value. That is where we have adjusted our portfolio, like we recently wrote about it also, that capex cycle is picking up big time in India. And if the capex cycle picks up, we will see a fairly large wealth creation coming from there also. So that's a new nuance we have added to our portfolio, that how do we kind of capture on this next 5-7 year kind of cycle, start capturing now. So like this, you kind of keep tweeting, keeping in mind this basically, again, the type C, that where the opportunities are moving from where it is today, where the risk reward is moving in what favor. And those kind of tweaks we keep doing in our portfolio, keeping in mind where the opportunity sort of lie or where the opportunity is moving. And those are very much kind of all the time up our alley. But honestly speaking, Neeraj, we don't really tinker our portfolio based on what's happening, from next 5-10% perspective.
Okay, so that's the macro question out. You're not adjusting your portfolio for market corrections adjustments. What about outperformance or underperformance relatively? Now, let me just try and use examples out here just to illustrate my point. By virtue of the seminars and the management interviews that you've done, it's easy to surmise that you might be having positions, say, in an ICICI Bank, in an ICICI Insurance, or ICICI Securities, or a Praj, or some of the others. Those are the 4 that I distinctly remember you have done. Maybe you've done more, maybe you've done less. My question is that, for example, in the case of one of the large private sector banks you own, there has been a bout of severe outperformance vis-a-vis some of the others, right? So maybe the percentage weightages have moved up. In a case of this ethanol machinery manufacturing company, there has been a recent bout of severe underperformance, so to say, compared to what it was, say, maybe a quarter or 2 quarters ago. How are you adjusting for that? Do you buy more of the ones which are recently lagging because the long-term story is good? Do you kind of adjust your portfolio for a sharp uptick, even if the long-term story is looking good? What are you doing?
So I think our hypothesis is very clear. We don't really care about 1, 2, 3, months or quarters of kind of underperformance, outperformance. We went through that pain even in the beginning of this year when our portfolio was underperforming because PSUs and metals did very well, right? So every money manager, every investor rather would go through this kind of pain. I think as long as we remain convinced, as long as we are convinced about our investment hypothesis about either a sector or a company, we will stay put even if we go through a short-term pain in that. If something goes up sharply, right? I mean, then we look at, let's say, something that you mentioned, Praj, when we bought at $80, we never thought that in a year's time it will go to 300. Right? Never thought. Right? We thought probably it will, in 3 years' time it will go to 250, 300 rupees. That was our hypothesis. Now at that level, we still think that it has a long way to go. But the point is that we did not, sort of sell out anything, and we are not selling anything. But when the new investor comes, that time the risk reward for him not the same. So we try to then kind of tweak around and say whether we should have the same weightage on that investor for that same stock or not. Those kind of tweaks, you can very much do in your portfolio because that's a part of the portfolio construction strategy. But that has nothing to do with a particular stock. The day we feel that the growth and risk reward is not in your favor, we will sell, and we will not hesitate at that point in time whether whether it has done or not, how much it has returned, how much is not. Ultimately, key underlying delivery is the business and the key hypothesis.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned PSU banks and metals because those are pockets that a bunch of fairly smart money as well is bullish on. Are you not? And if no, why?
No, so we are bullish on PSU banks. There's no question on that. But again, PSU banks, in my opinion, at best can be a trade. Because ultimately, unless you know the clarity of the management, say ultimately big amount of money, structural money made by the managements. And we all know that, right? Now there you don't have clarity on the management and the corporate governance structure. Of course, there's a huge deep undervaluation that will play out. SBI has been doing very, very well, and most PSUs have been doing very well, and they can play out, and they will play out, rather, I would say. But again, with the same risk reward, you can make that much money in somewhere else. Like, just to give you some sense, I don't see much difference between ICICI Bank and SBI. In fact, I feel ICICI Bank will, from a corporate corporate loan profile perspective, but ICICI Bank will do much better because of the rest of the other stuff, whether known FE-based franchisee or retail portfolio quality and stuff like that. So if you can achieve similar or better objective to somewhere else, why to go and take that risk? Now every investor has his own right. So I'm not saying that why people are playing, they are not smart. I'm not making any point of that kind. So we don't do that. We typically stay away from where you can be the last one to know about what's changing. So we typically try to kind of stay away from those.
What about metals? I mean, they've had a rocking 2021 thus far, and now they are rocking for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, so let's see. I mean, see again, that's the nature of the game. So we don't understand global commodity cycle. Of course, it looks pretty decent, I think, the way it appears. But again, they tend to kind of, surprise you. So we don't have a deep expertise in understanding. Of course, there was a huge risk reward at one point in time, which has kind of tilted extremely in favor of, being equal kind of thing. Now, I would say that, a lot of things have to get right. And probably price hike thing is done and more volume growth will be the story. So then it becomes a normal, usual story, and you play with we would probably stay away from something like that because the sheer volatility is very high and ability to kind of predict trajectory becomes very, very sort of difficult. So we kind of try to stay away.
And that's an interesting line. A lot of things need to fall right for it to move further. So do your own checks. Because last couple of questions, a sector that almost was a consensus overweight amongst many participants, and you've been bullish on real estate now for a number of quarters or a couple of years maybe or more. And I remember your arguments earlier about how RERA might do to real estate what SEBI did to financial services or broking, so to say. My question is, in this stop-start world of COVID, wherein real estate companies are also saying that, oh, we thought things were looking very good, but suddenly the second wave and it hampered operations. Who knows what will happen to the third wave? So in this stop-start world wherein operations, sales, and collections, all of those could be under issue, is it uh, prudent to have an overweight position? I'm asking you. I'm not saying you have or you don't have. But is it prudent to have an overweight position, or should one be cautious simply because of the stop-start scenario of COVID?
Again, well, depends on your time horizon. If you have a 5-year time horizon, 10-year time horizon, no brainer, because the structural change and the shifts are very, very much in place. And the reason why you will get those companies at a reasonable valuation is because of those uncertainties you mentioned, right? Otherwise, if you see just look at any company's land bank, and if you see if the real estate prices starts looking up, the delta which you have on overall equity valuation is humongous, right? So first of all, I do believe that the real estate sector post RERA is a very different thing than what it was before. Like we've spoken about it in the past. I think it is consolidating. Only good quality people, good quality builder with capability of delivering brand financing will survive and sustain and grow and create value. And from a demand perspective, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that there will be huge demand coming about, right? Of course, we had a bad period, but now economic cycle is picking up. We are seeing massive job creation in IT, manufacturing, and many other sectors. Now, this delta job creation will create delta demand. You are sitting in a situation where the fresh supply for last 5-7 years have not come in, right? The first stage would be to absorb the ready supply, which I think in every city you talk about, I think very large amount of absorption has happened, especially in a mid to smaller ticket transaction, up to 75 lakhs to a crore kind of transaction house value. Huge amount of absorption has happened. Now, builders are preparing for the new capacity, new supply. Now that takes typically 12 to 18 months, maybe 24 months to kind of plan. And so you will see a situation maybe where real estate prices might harden up, but you are not playing the game for real estate prices going up. You're playing game for more, just like any other business which can convert. So this business model is changing, moving from buying land to JDA model. So huge changes happen in this model. And according to me, this will be like any other market. In India, it's very significantly significantly underrepresented in Indian markets, maybe less than 1% or 2%. Now, can it become 5x from here? Answer is very much yes. So I personally think that it's a sector which will do very well over the next 5-7 years. Now it can create some uncertainty, like you said, over the next 1-2 quarter. I don't know whether third wave is coming or not. Though those you have to be prepared for. But otherwise, I think it's all, nothing changes from my argument standpoint.
Okay, great. Vikas, lovely having you as always. Thanks so much for shedding some light and talking about some common sense investing as well. Really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Neeraj. Always pleasure to chat with you. You always bring out best from your speakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It depends on the speaker really, and kudos to you for explaining it so well. Thanks so much. And viewers, thanks for tuning into this edition of The Talking Point.